please go ahead, I'm done.
Yeah, you
I'd like to
Take the whole. You will do me good.
Well, there's just not enough room.
Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order, Monday, November 11th, 2024. I'd like to ask you to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Number 3 on our agenda, approval of the minutes. Board of Education regular meeting, October 28th, 2024. To have a motion to approve the minutes, please. Michael? Second, Tom Schlank. Any corrections, comments? If not, can we call the roll?
Ms. Bradley?
Abstain.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Ms. Eichler?
Yes.
Mr. Hartshorn?
Abstain.
Ms. Hubbard?
Abstain.
Dr. Krutikaran?
Yes.
Ms. Livia-Daddio?
Yes.
Mr. McDonough?
Yes.
Dr. Delay?
Abstain.
Mr. Reed?
Yes.
Ms. Schlank?
Yes.
Ms. Schuster?
Yes.
Motion carries. Moving on, presentation of athletic financing, which is listed on page 6. We have a brief introduction in this particular case. Dr. Byers and I discussed handling this at a time when we weren't considering action on the budget. This has been discussed year after year after year as part of the budget, finding additional sources of financing. And we felt it would be a better position to do it at a time when we weren't looking at it from the standpoint of how much money is it going to bring in, although that may be part of it at the time. So we have a presentation here to inform our board and the public a little bit about athletic financing, the issues involving it. And we're going to have a presentation tonight. We'll have a little bit of a discussion, but we will not take any action tonight. All right?
And so I did have some requests just broadly as to how we actually just address athletic uniforms. And so I've invited Mr. Goodwin here first so he can kind of walk the board through that process. Again, somewhat separate from the regular budgeting, and we don't have enough time for those things. And then that will sort of transition us into, Ms. Loomis has done a really nice analysis of pay to participate and kind of the current status of that across DIRGB districts and what it would potentially look like in Amity. So I'll let Mr. Goodwin start us off, and then Ms. Loomis will follow up.
Good evening, everybody. Mr. Goodwin here, Director of Athletics for both middle schools and the high school. So first is outfitting Amity Athletics. First, I'll start with the middle schools. The majority of our teams are provided with a uniform T-shirt that they keep. So, you know, the soccer, the track, cross-country teams, volleyball teams, they keep their uniforms. We do have some uniforms that we do collect back and reuse each year. Basketball, it's a home and away reversible set that we use. And then baseball and softball, we just found that it's easier. We had little sublimated shirts that look like uniforms. It's nice. So that's how we do that. I'm sorry. And then we do have some other purchases in equipment such as balls, scorebooks, goals, nets, bases, track implements, timing equipment, cones, flags, standards, goal cages. We have a total of, I believe, 26 middle school sports. Might be 27 now with the addition of the middle school wrestling program. Parents are expected to provide sneakers and cleats, bats, gloves, catcher equipment, helmets, sticks, and headgear. So there are costs to parents to participate in athletics in the middle school. High schools are provided uniforms that the athletic department purchases in an equitable manner. We have 31 varsity sports. We have home and away uniforms. And in total, I guesstimate at about 3,000 uniforms. It could be plus or minus, but it's a lot. 67 total teams that we offer here at the high school, including varsity, JV, and freshman levels as well. Many teams pass uniforms down, so it's been, the standard, passed down so that we can get more years out of a uniform, not just 4 or 5 or 6 years, and it reduces overall costs. If we had to purchase new uniforms for all our levels, my budget would be probably double in that area. Like I said before, that their uniforms are replaced on a rotational basis with the length of uniform life in mind. Some uniforms go a little faster than others. The general rule of thumb used to be 4 years, but with sublimation, which again is a new way of doing uniforms, so we don't heat transfer on uniforms anymore. So long gone if you played in high school and you had the cracked lettering and it was halfway peeling off and stuff like that. We don't have that anymore because a lot of our uniforms are sublimated. They start off white and they basically paint the uniform to whatever specifications I do. And that's one of the fun parts of my job is designing the uniforms with the coaches. And then we play on a lot of all-weather fields nowadays. So you're not getting the grass stains, the mud and everything like that like you used to. So uniforms naturally last a little bit longer. So now we're finding that we're getting closer to 6 years out of a set of uniforms. Obviously, again, some uniforms not, the white ones still yellow a little bit and that kind of stuff, but for the most part, we've edged some of those out. Some of the teams are so traditional and so, like the baseball team won the state championship last spring. The cold uniforms they wore probably are about 12 years old. They just will not retire those uniforms. They refuse to. And hey, I can't blame them. They won another state title in them. So, it's kind of funny. But most teams, we are between that 4 and 6 years. And again, we get a total of 8 to 10 per uniform. Some teams we do purchase a new uniform each year. So teams like the swim team, all right? We're not gonna have kids hand back their swim suit and give it to somebody else. All right, we purchase a new swimsuit for each swimmer, both boys and girls. And then the dance team, they have routines. They change their routines each year for a new competition. So we purchase their jazz. Sometimes they do hip hop, so we get their uniforms for that. And so those are a couple of the examples of teams that get uniforms each year. Again, a lot of the uniforms also have to comply with NFHS, the National Federation of State High School Association rules. So if they change the rules, I'll give you an example. We had volleyball. I'm not even kidding you. We got our uniforms. We're out there. The official comes over to me and says, "Your numbers are a ½ inch too low."
Ooh.
They changed the rule, and I said, "Really? You can see that from here?" And, so it gets that intricate sometimes in some sports. Other sports don't have as many rules. Soccer switched from whites being home to the dark uniforms being home. That way teams could do things like pink days and other color days and not mess up who can see who and that kind of stuff. We used to purchase, a lot of times used to be full top and bottoms for uniforms, and we've gone away with that from some sports. We only purchase top uniforms for, say, track and field nowadays. We don't even purchase shorts for that anymore because everyone wears those compression shorts for the girls. Football, basketball, soccer, lacrosse, we still purchase the traditional top and bottoms. Like I said, track and field, volleyball, we purchase the top only. In general, they range from 75 to 125 per uniform, probably closer to that 125. Bottoms range from 60, it's probably a little bit lower, closer towards the $60 to $100 per uniform for the bottom. We'll get into some non-funded costs. So sports aren't, just because we don't have pay to participate doesn't mean that sports are free here. You have to purchase, and as I look around the table, many of you, if not all of you, have had, students who have done some kind of athletic venture here at Amity. If you're a baseball or softball player, you have anything from bats to gloves, batting gloves, cleats, helmets. If you're a catcher, there's a whole nother set of gear there. So you're looking at, $810 to $1,200 if you're a catcher, just to participate in that sport. Hockey is crazy, $2,200, and that's $400 a stick. Nowadays, skates are going from anywhere. You can get probably the cheapest pair of skates you can get nowadays, from what I hear, is about $600, all the way up to about $1,600 with replaceable blades and all that stuff. So, that's what it costs to just to outfit your son or daughter for hockey. Skiing, again, you have to purchase everything from practice lift tickets to poles, boots, skis, helmet. The USA skiing now has a specific helmet certification, so you have to purchase the correct helmet, which is $300 or $400. Yes? So you're talking $2,000 or more there. Golf, again, estimate, I think $1,400 is a low estimate. But again, clubs, tees, practice balls. We do provide match balls for the kids, but we don't provide practice balls, shoes, and if you have a glove. So that's some of the extra costs of athletics. And families and parents, they bear the burden of all these non-funded costs, all right? In addition, I'm sure if your son or daughter has done a sport lately, you know about all the gear sales that the teams are doing nowadays with hoodies and sweatpants and all kinds of stuff. And it's nice because a lot of them get their names on it and that kind of stuff. We were actually just talking before the meeting about names on uniforms and stuff, but a lot of the kids will get the sweatshirt with their name on the sleeve, which is nice. And then they obviously keep it at the end. But again, it's an added expense to families for that. All right? And while this is supported by the BoE operational budget, athletics is not, quote unquote, necessarily free. I think this is Terry. I'm going to switch.
Good evening. So Dr. Byers asked me to kind of give you some more information about the details of what pay to participate would look like. And first I do want to thank, this is really a team effort. The athletic department had to give me information on the athletes. The Power School instructional leader had to give me information from Power School about sibling relationships, free and reduced lunch data. And then the list of questions that we used to survey that I had developed, one of the staff members in finance called all the DERB schools to gather that data so that we could put this presentation together for you tonight. So first I just want to remind you who the DERB schools are. This is listing 19 of the 21. I obviously did not survey Orange and Woodbridge because they're elementary, they don't have secondary sports. So these are the school districts that we are comparing ourselves to. Of the 19 in the survey, 13 do have pay to participate and 6 do not. I will note that 2 districts enrolled, started pay to participate a few years ago, actually probably some one maybe 10 years ago, one maybe like 5 or 6, and they stopped it. One of the no's is obviously Amity. Guilford is a no. The only sport they charge for is hockey. They leave that as a standalone. And then Fairfield and Greenwich are the other 2 no's. So what are the ranges of fees that are charged? $100 to $300 per sport. You could see that 300 is really kind of the outlier there. They're more in the range of the average 157 per sport. That's the trend line across those who do actually charge. Family caps, there are some who have no family caps. There's no data listed there for them, and then some who do. Again, They range from $400 to $1,200 for family caps. Again, the $1,200 kind of being the outlier there. The average family cap is around $597. In addition to that, some districts have additional fees that are sports specific. As Mr. Goodwin alluded to, some of these sports are expensive, hockey being one, football being one, and gymnastics. Hockey is the most common that you'll see an additional fee charged for, along with the pay to participate fee. There's a separate fee for hockey. Some have structures about caps on that. Some have co-op arrangements and varying costs, like Granby listed there at $1,000. Their range was actually $1,000 to $2,000 could be their fee. One district charges $150 for football, and one charges separate for gymnastics, again with a structure with a family cap in play. So, what would it look like if Amity decided to do pay to participate? We've got to start somewhere with some basic assumptions in order to come up with some kind of revenue estimate to give you. So, first is, I'm going to go with the $150 is the sport, the fee per sport. We saw the range, the average was $157, so we'll start at $150. Middle school sport, there wasn't a lot of information, but what we saw was $90, so we started that at lower. Family cap, we set at $500. Again, you saw the average was $597, so we're being conservative here. We said $500. This is assuming no additional charges for hockey, football, gymnastics. I don't know, we still have a gymnastics team? We have dance.
Sometimes we have a couple.
Yeah. No charge for unified sport athletes. Students qualifying for free lunch would not have any payment due for sports. And students qualifying for reduced lunch would pay 50% of the pay to participate fees. So those are the assumptions that we are basing this estimate on. This is where the data came in from Power School and such. So over 1,000 athletes at the high school level, assuming 150. There are 26 that would reach that family cap of multi-sport. And remember, if it's 150, you need more than 3. So it's not one child playing 3 sports or 2 kids, 2 and 1. Somewhere you got to hit a 4th sport. And this is data based on the school year of 24. So again, we know this data will change every year based on what our current family structure are, and number of athletes. The number of athletes that qualify for free lunch were 60, so that would be a reduction. The number of high school athletes qualifying for reduced lunch would be 19, and again, another reduction. So high schools, estimated revenue would be $160,000 roughly. Middle school sports did the same kind of analysis, starting with 422 students. 11 families might qualify for the family cap, 24 free and reduced, 24 free, 8 reduced. So another 40,000 could possibly be generated from middle school sports. This would all be done through our payment system, My Payments Plus. There's a fee to process of 3.99%, so that would take about $8,000 off that revenue, giving us a revenue estimate of approximately $193,000. So what does that mean? That means for the towns, based on the current allocation rate that the open enrollment report, which you'll see later in the packet tonight, that would offset Bethany's allocation by about $31,000, Orange is about $93,000, and Woodbridge is about $68,000. But what does it mean per family? So I contacted the towns and asked them how many taxpayers do you have, and then put that in there, and then you can see the breakdown. About $13 for a household in Bethany, $17 in Orange, and about $22 in Woodbridge. Other things that we need to consider if we go in this direction. We need to develop and implement a process to collect fees. The staff are required to input this data into Power School. Free and reduced scholarships are applied manually. There's a manual determination of when that cap is reached, because, I mean, it's possible in the first fall season, if multiple family, but it might not be till the spring season. So it has to be a constant monitoring of when a family hits that cap. Right now, we don't have an automatic way to do that. And we also have to be careful when we assess the fees. You know, you don't want to charge people and then have to refund them if they don't make the team, but then once the competitions start, you want to make sure everyone has paid in full so that they're eligible to play. So that timing has to be, that's a very short window of tryouts to team to actually collecting the fees. Then the board would have to develop a policy to address non-payment of fees. What would we do if someone didn't pay the fees and yet they made the team? Obviously, the athletic handbook would have to be updated to reflect those changes. So, philosophical and mission-driven considerations. Does pay to participate align with Amity's mission to enable every student to become a lifelong learner and a literate, caring, creative, and effective world citizen? Does it support Portrait of a Graduate? Does it align with Amity's commitment to the 3 A's? Does pay to participate align with our district's wellness policy? Does it align with the board's commitment to equity? Those are some other thoughts that need to go into the decision. So I don't know if anybody has any more questions tonight. Obviously, it's a lot of information to digest.
Could I just see the allocations to the towns per taxpayer? Thank you.
So 193,446 is what it would cost, what we would save, correct?
Correct.
If we didn't do that.
It would be another revenue source in the budget that would offset town allocation.
Getting into the spirit of budget season, and you guys know me by now, we have a lot more than that left over at the end of every year. So the fact that we're talking, I mean, I thought this number was going to be a lot larger before this presentation was presented. I'm out. I say don't fix it if it's not broken.
Well, and that was some of the intent, right? We always talk about it, but we never had numbers to put to it for you to either say, oh gee, this is a great source of revenue and look at how much it will save us in the budget. Or, to your point, because I actually thought they were gonna be higher until Terry did this, wow, that actually doesn't bring in very much revenue, and for the headache it would cause us type of idea. But I think you need to have that information so that when you do go and talk to boards of finance and they start to say, well, why aren't you doing pay to play? 13 other DIRG B districts are doing this. You can go armed with information. Or you may come back and say, you know what, we really do need to lower the budget, and as you have famously said, sometimes every dollar counts. And so here's another place where every dollar counts. But again, this was just intended to be informational, so you can kind of process and chew on the data before we actually have to make these decisions. But you also actually have information which we've never had in the past. It's just been speculative.
I also have to say that is very well put together.
Yeah, thank you for that slide in particular.
Very understandable.
Yeah.
And then you look at the impact of the numbers compared to our mission, right, all of our values, and you look at it in terms of the work it would cause. I'm out.
We'd have to have a serious conversation about that last slide and how it aligns with our values. I think that is the most important.
Can I ask a question to the two students on the end? Do either of you play sports?
Yes, I do, but not through the high school.
Okay, well, even just being part of the high school, what is your guys' take on uniforms and everything else comparatively to other schools, if you can comment? Like being the students that are wearing uniforms, seeing the uniforms, how do we stack up? Is there anything that you'd change? Is there anything that you see as an issue?
I think the current model is actually working pretty well.
Okay.
And then I think implementing fees for uniforms and other things related to sports would only deter certain students.
Yeah, no, I'm not going there. I'm just asking, like, do you see anything that could be improved? Like, our uniforms are comparative to other schools, like, we're not like the low man on the totem pole, like, from what you guys see, we're comparative good, no issues coming out, no shortfalls.
Yeah, I was on the swim and dive team my freshman year, and the uniforms were always amazing. We had
Okay.
very high quality swimsuits.
Okay, that's what I was hoping to hear, but I figured
Janet, don't be quiet, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to say, like, I run on the cross-country team, and we actually just got new uniforms this year. But, I mean, either way, the new uniforms were great. Previously, I think the old uniforms were also great. Like, we were looking at the other schools at meets being like, oh, wow, our uniforms are so much more shabbier. It was just like, we felt like we were pretty much equal, yeah.
Okay.
So I have a comment which is not related necessarily to the decision. I think that amounts are small enough that there is no reason to change it. But I found it a little odd to call this pay to participate, given that we make everybody pay $1,500 to $2,000, and then we on the additional $150 we call it somehow that it is pay to participate. I found the term quite strange, and I just wanted to point that out. Like, meaning I don't think we are charging. People still have to pay, and that's fine. There is a sense of school pride, etc., which might be a good reason why you might want to do this. And and I just think maybe there is a better way to frame this. This pay to participate sounds awkward.
Well, and it's intended because pay to play suggests your child may actually
Not
always come off the bench and play in a game, and that is not how we typically run our athletic programs. So to make it clear that you are part of the team, but.
No, I got that, but
Yeah.
to participate, you still have to spend a lot of money,
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
And so this is maybe the schools, the board saying, oh, you're representing us, and we are excited to give you something from our sake. And maybe there is a better, positive way of presenting what we do.
I want to give everybody a turn to speak, so Christine and
I
then we'll come
appreciate this, I really do, because we have spoken about this yearly, and it always comes up as an option, so having a dollar amount attached to it is really helpful. Beyond the costs that you mentioned, I know that we have, for our athletes, I mean, we have the camps that they're encouraged to go to that cost extra money, there's the merchandise sales for multiple sports teams, and then within that, the parents and, God bless the PTSOs and the yes, for the work that they do with the bake sales, the car washes, the fundraisers, the restaurants. There is so much money that goes in that I would almost like to have a different conversation about how we can contribute more to the expense that the parents take on supporting their young athletes, just because it is incredible when you think about the amount of money the parents are putting into the school supports.
I'll second that motion.
We have a question down here too, somebody that hasn't spoken. Carol? Get that?
I have a question about uniforms. So do they come from the same, do you order from like the same place? I'm just wondering about the quality of the uniforms. You had a price, like a range of the cost, but how does the quality compare like across the different sports, like football compared to soccer, for example?
So I work with, there's a lot that goes into it. We have, I would say 3 main vendors that I use for our uniforms. I stick with those. Number one, they're local people. I'm big. It's just my personal feeling that we have done business with Blanchette Sports for over 50 years, and they have been very good to us. They would come out, if I called them right now and said I needed a soccer ball right now, they would drive out and deliver it. So they've been awesome. Sportsman's and also Stadium System have been our main source for uniforms. Stadium System, right now, we're looking to try to get some new ski uniforms that we haven't gotten in a long time. And they have risen in price dramatically from when we last purchased them. Stadium System actually has a company, a factory they work with, that actually took one of our suits. They are looking at it so that they can see if they can make a version that would be sublimated and also fit in a little more to our fiscal conservative budget, right? And so that happens. Coaches and sports kind of tend to vary towards one vendor or one make brand than the others. Most of our uniforms are Adidas or Under Armour. So like boys soccer, they love their Adidas, and girls soccer has been Under Armour for the past 6 months. You talked about swimming. We switched over to the Jolene suits. They came to me and said, "Come on, Mr. Goodwin." And I said, "Well, they're a little more expensive." And they said, "But they look great." Okay, And look, we're now back-to-back SEC champs. But, you know, we do everything we can to try to provide our kids with great uniforms. You know, case in point, we finally got some new black uniforms for boys ice hockey last year. We're all excited about them. And all of a sudden, we had an SEC patch, which is our league. Half the patches fell off. Like, what the heck is this? Immediately, the vendor took them back and replaced all of them. They're gonna look really sharp again with all their stuff. So they back all their products and that kind of stuff. So I'm very happy with our vendors. And I would say that, you know, going around our league, we are very well outfitted.
I had two thoughts, or one thought. When I saw the pay to participate, the thing that went through my mind is, we're looking at athletes all the time, and there's a lot of participation that goes on in the school, and I feel like if we did look to do participation, you know, our other band, chorus, drama, like, are these things that are gonna be things that we would look to encourage kids to pay to participate in those things as well? You know, it shouldn't be something that just falls on the athletes. The second thing was, I know that Mr. Goodwin talked about how kind of the uniforms go down and down. I was fortunate enough that my daughters picked up field hockey this year at the middle school. And I honestly, I try to be all sunshine and roses, but our uniforms were not on par with kind of the kids that we saw. Our kids had sublimated T-shirts, whereas the Guilfords, the Brantfords, the Haddam Killingworths had like real field hockey uniforms. And so for me, that, you know, I think that was something that I kind of took away from it and said, hey, this is something so I was very surprised. I didn't bring this up about these uniforms tonight. So when somebody else brought it up, I was like, oh, well, what's going on here? So it was definitely something that I noticed.
I would have to agree with the soccer team as well. Like, when we played Cheshire and some other schools, we just looked a bit different than the other teams. And yeah, I think it'll be, you know.
So the rationale behind that is that the kids, so it's very hard sometimes to collect uniforms, and that's a lot of extra work. Yeah. And giving the kids a shirt, you see a lot of the kids come up to the high school, they're still wearing their middle school shirts that they participated in. You don't have to, you know, give those back, and that's the way we could go to a uniform if we want to just look better, to you know, go to a reusable uniform. That adds more work because you have to design and order those, and you know, I always found it as more the sense of pride that the kid got to participate and keep the shirt.
Well, but I think our other sports showed that when we get them nicer uniforms, we get those SEC championships.
I might have missed this, but to pay to play does not include the extra costs that the parents have to pay, that list you said. So they also have to pay for all that other equipment plus pay to pay.
Thank you for putting all this together. I really appreciate it. So a question I have is, well, first of all, I echo everyone else's sentiment that I'm not in support of any type of fee for students to participate in chorus, band, musicals, or sports. And if there were ways to offset costs even more, that would be wonderful. But another question I have, Ernie, does the middle school gym uniform fall under your department?
No.
Okay. Because, you know, I hear from parents about the pennies of having to buy them, and then it is touted that, oh, your siblings can use them. However, they're asked to use a Sharpie on them, which, by the way, is impossible to get out, even with the old, you know, using rubbing alcohol. So I wasn't sure if, since we're talking about budgets, is there a way to, I'm not sure who that falls under, to build that in, to, you know, recycle that into the, I have a lot of them in my house. I'm sure I can just sell them back to the school, and if you can find a way to get the name off of them, that would be great. Oh, I did see MIT has some kind of new engineering where it's for logos and stuff too, so supposedly you can change them out.
That's right.
Can I ask one last question, please?
Yep.
What's the impetus for this, for like, I know that it's come up a couple times, but I guess what's the thought behind?
It was probably me. I asked. I flat out asked.
Oh, okay.
Just as an education thing to myself and as a new board member, I specifically asked, I said, hey, what is the uniforms, what are expenses? My daughter's a freshman, she just started a team, and I had a couple people similar to him question some of our uniforms that, like you're saying, we didn't quite maybe look as snazzy as other teams. And I said, hey, can you fill us in? And I'm sure, I'm guessing a couple of you back there are here to listen to it too. Like my question to you is, if you could change anything, and please don't take it as without a price tag, would there be anything that you would change if you could?
To be honest, I'm very, very proud of what we have done here at Amity for many years. The previous athletic director, to me, is in like the National Hall of Fame. He's so well regarded all over the country. So Amity has had a very good reputation of having quality athletics. Obviously uniforms, we do our best to outfit as best we can, and we have things that come up. But I think we're in a very good spot. I think a lot of our teams get what they need. Actually, the dance, you talk about dance, but dance came to me today and said, listen, would you ever get us a second outfit for our routine? The routine that we are doing in Palm is just not, the uniform just doesn't fit. And because we try to be equitable and not equal, I was able to say yes, and which is, I think, a really nice thing. The coach was very excited. I think the girls will be very excited, and it'll be a nice thing that we can do for them. So we are very lucky that Amity has had a very strong philosophy of outfitting and putting athletics as one of the 3 A's that we care a lot about. And I think it shows. We had a great fall, and it's not just in wins. We just received an email today that I think capitalizes what we're trying to do in high school athletics. We got an email from a Guilford parent this morning thanking us for the incredible, her son was hurt at the end of the game and was sitting on the bench all by himself. And our players went through the handshake line and took the time to go over to him and shake his hand as well. And the parents just were blown away with our sportsmanship, our gratitude, and complimented our coaches and everything like that. So that's the things that we're trying to do in athletics. It's great to put banners up, but it's those long-lasting memories that we are really trying to do and trying to teach those. To be honest, the portrait of the graduate, I go over it every coaching meeting that we have, is how important that athletics fits into that portrait of a graduate that you all worked very hard on and I think is continuing. So,
Kathy?
Yeah, to that point, we're looking at what it costs for a lot of those sports to participate in, even though we're not doing it.
right.
How limiting do you find that?
Limiting as in
Limiting to
numbers?
students who would
Who
want
would
to
come?
participate, could participate, and is there ever any room, like we talked about even in pay to play, if they can't pay for lunch, we make some things there. Is there any thought, any room, are you finding it not limiting?
I right now don't find it limiting. It would be maybe something that might be a survey thing that we could do. Maybe there are people out there that we don't know about because, we do have, a variance of economics in Amity. I don't feel that with the feedback that I get, but there might be some kids that are limited. We do have, I know that we have like a locker of field hockey sticks, just in case somebody doesn't have one. We can provide it. For freshman girls lacrosse, we were finding that girls, were like, I don't want to purchase the equipment. We have a bag that our freshman coach carries around with a couple of extra sticks and gloves and stuff like that. So, could we start like a bank? Sure we could, of stuff. Somebody wanted to start up the used Amity gear store because all the kids who graduate, their parents have all this extra gear that they purchased.
I think that's a great idea.
That's a great idea.
I mean, if you talk to parents whose kids ski, they go to the used ski sale every year.
Yeah.
I do want
I-
to finish this up.
Yeah, and I
so-
think, Kathy, and the question you're asking is a much bigger one and goes far beyond the school. So if you think of the number of our student athletes who actually come up having started athletics as a 6-year-old or an 8-year-old, and all of the time and investment that parents have already put in, that's also a limiting factor. And that's not something you can fix, but
Right.
certainly a kid who has played tennis since they were 6 is going to do a pretty good job on the tennis team, and somebody who didn't have those opportunities until they're 14. And when you have to make cuts because you can only fit so many kids on a tennis team, that also comes through. And that's a problem far beyond what we can address, but I do think maybe sometimes those equity issues that you're asking for are actually rooted much deeper and earlier in families' lives.
But I do think, you know, a swap shop is a great idea.
Okay, our last
Yes.
comment.
So I want to go back to that framing issue of pay to participate. It just made me feel uncomfortable, and I just wanted to propose, like, is there a way to think about it? That this is like, what we are giving the students because they, it's a matter of pride that they are wearing our shirts or whatever, and I think it's a kind of a pride budget, not a participation, tax, right? Like I think it's a pride, Amity pride budget, and I think maybe there is a way to frame that as something more positive rather than as a cost, which is why I think the discussion goes the way it does.
Well, what about activity fee? I mean, that's more of what it's positioned as. It's more of an activity fee than you're really playing to participate, because to the point of everyone else is that parents do put a substantial amount of money for gear and for helmets and et cetera. And I do agree that, some type of swap would be great. I mean, we do the ski swap because our kids you keep growing, and especially if you're, so that's something that can be established, that would be great. And I also think that perhaps if you could do a survey to students and parents, because some of these, they are barriers to entry, skiing especially. That's a lot of equipment. And even swapping that stuff out, those boots can still be 200, skis 220, et cetera. They might not be brand new because they're not 350, 400, but it's still a barrier.
Okay, I'm going to end this conversation. I'd like to remind board members as we go through the budget, as we develop the budget, keep some of these thoughts in mind. We probably can answer questions better when people say, well, why don't you have a pay-to-play type fee or something like that? You have that information now. And also down the road, I think maybe if we look at this more deeply as far as a principle, a philosophy of the board, we can maybe establish something so that we would know where to go in the future. It's been my experience over the years that school districts that establish these fees generally do it from the standpoint of not reducing the cost to the taxpayers, but because they don't have enough money in the budget to pay for it. And we've been able to handle that, and so that might be something that you should all consider. So with that, we will go on to public comment. I would read the statement that I do prior to public comment at all our meetings. This time, the board would like to invite members of the public up to the lectern for public comment. Please state your full name and address. If you are a student or under 18 years of age, please state only your first name. Each speaker will be allowed up to 3 minutes for public comment, with a maximum of 20 minutes per meeting allocated for any one item. Speakers are reminded that the presentations are to be made in a respectful manner. Derogatory language, which maligns the character of staff members, board members, and other members of the public, is unacceptable and not in keeping with board policy and core values. Please note that as a matter of board policy, the board does not respond to public comments or questions immediately, but may discuss the subject and respond if appropriate at a future time. We have 3 minutes, and we'll call anybody up to the lectern that wishes to make a statement in public comment.
Slide in later. I'm Robert Lim, 956 Corncob Lane in Orange. A few things. First, I want to just recognize it's Veterans Day. Perhaps you did already. I want to extend my appreciation to all members of the Amity community who served. And I actually didn't know this until the February meeting, but there's an Amity Military Wall of Honor by the cafeteria. So if there's anybody here who hasn't had a chance to just take a look, and maybe it's a great day to meditate on it today, and what that means to all of us. The second thing is I'm very excited about the community forum next week. I actually submitted a question. I don't know if we have to resubmit the question, so I know you can't respond, but maybe somebody speaks to that during the subcommittee updates. I know that people are planning on attending, and I think they would all appreciate if they have a chance to kind of have that interactive conversation. I know there's probably an idea that we want everybody to be very prepared who's participating in the panel so they can speak fully. To me, it's always okay just to say, hey, we need to check on that, we'll get back to you. I think that helps remove some of the challenges in terms of having that interactive dialogue, which honestly I think a lot of people want to have, and I think it would be a good thing. The last thing is I wasn't able to attend the presentation of the school climate survey. Fantastic presentation, I got a lot out of it. I noticed not everybody was there, so if you haven't had a chance to check it out on streaming, I encourage everybody to do so. The thing that caught my attention is the feedback from certain members of the community who had among the lowest scores in terms of cultural acceptance. So those are the trans folks. They make up a somewhat significant portion of the response. Their response was 1.6 on a scale of 4, which roughly 1.6. And that puts them somewhere between somewhat disagree and very much disagree. And when Mr. Downhour was talking about this in terms of the deltas from the previous year, one thing he said is, well, we administered the survey right after that February meeting, which if you were all here, there was a lot. There was a lot happening at that meeting. But there were some really comments about the trans community and the trans students at the school, which, I mean, they were here, they were listening, right? They know what adults in the community are saying about them. And, I got to thinking, I think it would be meaningful because, we're all part of this community too, right? I don't recall seeing anything, and I don't have a child at the high school, my son's at the middle school, but I don't see anybody just basically saying, hey, threats are not something that we accept, right? There was a lot of focus on the, disciplinary aspect or what they were protesting, so on and so forth. So, I know this board has been together for about a year.
Please finish up.
Yeah. Maybe this is an opportunity for you to have a voice in this as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else for public comment? If not, we'll move on to the next item on our agenda. Discussion of possible action, presentation of the 25-26 school calendar, which is on page 7.
So you have in your packet on page 7 a first draft for your consideration of the school calendar. This is developed in conjunction with the superintendents of our 3 elementary districts to try to align start dates, some of our professional development days, certainly our vacation periods, and in some cases, some of our holidays. I also know, because I meet with my student reps, that you were in receipt of some letters that were sent by our student government advocating for some additional holidays to be built into the calendar. I do know that they sent those letters to the boards of education for the 3 elementary districts. So I don't really have a response in terms of how those elementary districts are going to make decisions in the calendar. Just a couple of things that I will point out to you that make this calendar just a little bit different than the prior year calendars. The first one is in January. You'll notice that we always typically would come back the day after New Year's. The day after New Year's is a Friday, and so coming back for one day at the end of the holiday didn't seem like to be a very good idea, so we did add an additional day as part of that winter break. The other thing is this calendar does, as of right now, maintain the week off for February. This is also built into the calendars for Bethany and Woodbridge, which is the same way our process is this year. The other thing that I will point out is that the Lunar New Year is February 17th, so that holiday, even though it's not explicitly addressed on the calendar, is actually a day off of school for those students. March 20th, which is in red, is Eid. And so if the board were to decide to add Eid as a holiday, March 20th would be a day off of school. This is also going to be proposed as a day off of school at the elementary districts, but the reason is not because of Eid. It is because the elementary districts have always had a full day of professional learning in the springtime in March, and it just so happens that it lined up to be on that same day. So all of our students could potentially be out of school on that day, but for different reasons. Then you'll see that Good Friday is not attached to the April vacation. It comes too early this year, so it's its own standalone holiday. And then the proposal as it currently is that without Eid, school would end on June 11th. With Eid added, school would end on the 12th. The calendar does not include a proposal to add Diwali in this iteration. Obviously, if we did, it would bump us into the next week of June, starting with the 15th. And if that were the proposal by the board, what I would probably recommend is then taking out some of those days of February break, because pushing us into that week and then with the potential for snow just kind of makes everything end too late. So those are kind of the considerations that we have right now. The board doesn't have to take this up. You always get the calendar sort of a month ahead. The elementary districts also received it. The BoE superintendents and I will kind of gather the feedback we receive from the board. So if you have strong opinions one way or the other, please let me know that so I can advocate for that. Ultimately, in the end, as much as we try to be aligned, we still, this year, case in point, in terms of February break, it's different in the different districts. Our PD days are oftentimes different. So this is sort of, like I said, a first draft, and I will certainly see where the student gov letter to the elementary boards of ed, where that goes.
Do we have questions? Yes.
Is it possible for me to read the letter? Because I know Alex wanted to be here at the meeting to present it, but he couldn't be here tonight.
I think, did everybody get the letter? Did everyone read the letter?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, okay, yeah. I was going to mention the letter myself, but, just one comment. I had mentioned this before about contacting the other boards, and one of the concerns is to establish some sort of methodology, some policy that we can all agree on when looking at the calendar and days off. Right now, we generally have Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur off. Good Friday, of course, is a state holiday too, as a religious holiday. Christmas falls during the winter vacation. So the question was, should we be giving Rosh Hashanah and Good Yom Kippur off and not some of the other holidays? But where do we draw the line? And I think it's getting those boards vet together and looking at the problem and developing a plan of how we address it. The demographics in our community change over the years. We still have a very large Jewish population in this area, but it's getting smaller. So, will there be a point at what we say in the future, well, maybe we shouldn't have those days off, or even currently, there may be Jewish holidays that we don't give off, why don't we? So, we look at different religions and how they celebrate and what they celebrate. These are all things to look at. And I can't say for sure what we'll do on this calendar, since I want everybody to think about it and look at it, and we'll look at it next month and possibly vote on it then. But also going forward in the future, yes.
Is there any data about the absences on these holidays?
We did look at that last year, and it was a very low rate of absence, but that doesn't mean that the students aren't necessarily celebrating. But overall, none of them, well, of the two, we actually, the only one we really looked at was Eid. It didn't have a different absence pattern than a normal day of school. The places where, at the same time, we were looking at the February break, and the places where we saw deviations from the absence pattern were actually in the days around February break, more so than around Eid. We did not look at Lunar New Year or Diwali, but we could easily.
Karen?
Jen, but so the patterns, like the populations that celebrate these holidays are probably much smaller, so I'm wondering if it's even very easy to see a pattern.
No, it probably isn't. It is such a, yeah.
Yeah, they're small, so, yeah.
That's the concern and the issue, right? Yes,
Can you
Andrea.
just remind us the reason for PD on Thursdays and the reason for February break?
So professional learning on Thursdays, so at one point it used to be on Fridays, and it was based off of feedback from the Professional Development and Evaluation Committee that Fridays at the end of the week was not the best time to get meaningful PD from the teachers, although it was considered far more convenient for our families. But if it's really about helping our teachers, they requested that it was on Wednesdays or Thursdays, but some point during the week, and Thursdays was sort of what we settled on. But it was definitely driven by the need to move away from that Friday afternoon when the whole rest of the world has finished up and everybody's stuck here and not in the best mood for learning.
Do they stay beyond their contracted hours on a Friday though?
No, but I think it was still the general feeling of everybody else gets to go and we're stuck here. The week at February break was really because we in order to make for a meaningful senior experiential learning project, without the February break, we were getting a very short period of time for students to complete their unpaid internships or their senior interest projects. It was down, I think at its shortest, it was 8 days. So by the time you got settled in an internship, started to learn what to do, and then you were gone. So it was compounding both. It wasn't a great experience for our students, but at the same time, many of our partner group, like our community partners were like, it's too short for us to take kids in and do all this work for them only to be here for 8 days. So we were finding that our community partners were actually not as interested in having our students as interns. So by expanding that internship period, it sort of has opened back up both a more meaningful experience for our students, but also a bigger willingness for our community partners to accept our students.
But how, I guess I'm confused and unable to see how extending the school year gives them, did it have to do with finals? Is that was part of it as well?
It's that it's generated around the AP exam window. So they don't go out until the AP exam window is done, which is always the first 2 weeks in May. And so when we finished, at one point we were finishing almost in that first week in June, and it just wasn't enough time. Does that make sense now? Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, Faith, we'll come back. Yep.
Is there a reason that that Eid was looked at as opposed to Diwali, or just numbers of students, or?
I think it's because the original conversation started around Eid, and so that was last year, and we didn't have it built in, and so then when I was building the calendar this year, I just knew that that was the first consideration that had come up, and then really it was Alex's letter that brought up the other two holidays this year.
If I remember right, that was not true. I think Eid and Diwali were both brought up, and I was the one who said we should also do the Lunar New Year. So that was how I remember it. Yeah.
Anybody over here? Okay.
Just real quick, because this was last year, and I remember this discussion well. For new board members, we were told, and correct me if I'm wrong again, that for those who celebrate those holidays, they are excused absences. I know absences came up somewhere. So regular absence, if someone, Christian faith calls out on that day and is absent, they're gonna get charged, we'll call it, with a unexcused absence. With that particular faith, if it aligns with that date, they get an excused absence, just for new board members if you didn't know that, if that's still the case, right?
Anna?
Don't you get unexcused if you call in? Like, if you're absent, you're marked absent, but it becomes unexcused if your parent recognizes that or something, or no, you don't do any of that? Okay. So what qualifies for excused and unexcused?
That's a big question.
I
That's a real big
honestly
question.
don't
Everybody
think
comfortable.
I have time to answer that.
Oh, it's a big question.
Oh, yes.
All right.
So I will be more than happy at some point to take that up in one of our special meetings, but I can't even begin to tackle that right now.
No problem.
Carla?
I just wanted to jump off what Sean said because that was true. And then I also remember students that were here, or maybe there was board members who had mentioned that even though it's excused, many students will still come to school because they don't want to miss the instructional time. So by giving them the day, then it kind of takes that off their plate and they'll be able to enjoy their holiday, so.
Carol?
I just want to say that it's also, yes, they would be excused, but again, if the rest of the building is in session, they're going to come. It's also an opportunity for us to think about other religions, cultures, celebrations, right? You have the day off, and that's not to say, even if you don't celebrate, you know that, oh, this is Diwali or it's Eid, or, right? And you have friends that are of that faith or, culture. And so it's also a way of exposing our
Could be a learning
students
opportunity
and
for
also
friends, right?
also respect, right? So just want to say that.
Thank you. Just one more addition to this. Did get some feedback about the start of school. And, why did we add a February vacation instead of just starting school after Labor Day? Next year, in 2025, Labor Day is the 1st of September. So it's not really, it's not like starting on the 7th or something like that. But that changes from year to year, so it makes it inconsistent. So are we kind of on a pattern or plan that we start the Monday before Labor Day each and every year?
That has definitely been, since I've worked in this district, no, we did switch when COVID came. So we used to start the Wednesday before Labor Day, so it was pushed a little later, but we start with that Monday and those 2 half days. And I in the feedback, again, from the elementary districts, they love the half days, they like starting on that Monday, and that has been something that they've really advocated for ever since 2020.
Okay. Oh, Donna.
So I'm in the camp of starting after Labor Day. I've always been, to me, that has been the unofficial end of summer. So I would like to see us start after Labor Day. As a parent, I don't really enjoy starting before Labor Day and getting everyone ready, including the half days. I find them to be a little cumbersome in scheduling our time off and our break. And when we talk about the board calendar, it's the same thing of having an August meeting as well, because there was a lot that I couldn't watch because there was technical issues, and there were a lot of things discussed that I would like to have been a part of, but I was away. And it would be nice if the board also had off in July and August. So my other question is, how much for PD, and do we have full-day PD?
We have 3 full days in August, 1 full day in November, and then a 2-hour early release all of the other months.
Right, so just for consideration, I mean, is there a way, I support the recognizing of the additional 3 holidays, because I also understand that students don't want to miss learning and have to make up. I understand the district excuses them, but that doesn't change that. They'll probably still come in because they don't want to miss learning for some of those students. So I'm just wondering if there are ways that we can move those maybe PD days around to allow for those holidays as well. And I guess the next question is, I understand the teachers are, from what you said, are interested in having a Wednesday or a Thursday. You know, but what would probably be better for families is a Friday early dismissal.
So this is one of, and I appreciate that. PD is for teachers, and right, I'm always the person who's like, students first, we have to do what's best for students. If PD is really to make our teachers better for our students, then I have to have it on an optimal day for the teachers. It's one of those points where I really do have to think about the adults first, because I need them to get the most out of their learning to make it most meaningful for our students.
So can I ask why?
That
why
said,
Wednesday and Thursday?
the PD days around the holidays, we made a shift, again, I think it was 3 years ago. We used to only start the year with 2 PD days. And then we had the day in November and the day in March. We found that we did not have enough time to get through everything that we have to get through with our staff with just 2 PD days to start the year. And so we actually took away the March day and increased it to 3 in August. If we were to use, say, Diwali or Eid and turn those into professional development days, we would actually lose those 3 PD days at the start of the year. And we would be down to 1. And frankly, I cannot start the school year with 1 day of professional development. So it really is not a option for us to kind of use that. And then the November day is fairly locked in because it's election day, and while that doesn't have a direct impact on us per se, so many other districts in the state use schools as polling places. That state level professional development, say for health and PE teachers or for sometimes art teachers, it's actually planned for that day because it is the 1 day of professional development that consistently every single school district in the state of Connecticut has off. So if I have some unique professional development needs that's planned at a state level, that's the day that it happens, and I can send, again, my teachers out for some pretty meaningful, relevant PD on that day.
So what about the February break? I mean, is there any way to work out days that don't involve February? Just a question. And have we surveyed families around the February break?
No, because we haven't tried it yet.
This is,
Right, this
the
is our
board
first year
voted
that
to-
we're trying
the
it.
board voted to do this. This is the first year that we.
In a long time, yeah.
Hard doing it in a long time.
Just to get their
And,
opinions.
right, yeah, 1, 2 more, 3 more, that's it. And
Well, I'm
please try and make them short.
Just going off of what Ms. Schuster said, have we collected any data from the elementary schools about ending school a little bit later? Because I know a lot of summer programs don't start until the last 2 weeks of June, and sometimes this can impose a financial burden on families where they have to pay for childcare within like the first 2 weeks of June if we get out of school super early. So that's also maybe something.
So the one school district that is most concerned with when we end in June is Orange, because they have unair-conditioned buildings. And so they are truly the ones who sort of drive that very early start time in before Labor Day, because they very much want to be done with school by that second week of June, because they don't have air conditioning. And they have been also the one district where I know they've had to do early release days because it's just been too hot in the buildings in June. So again, and I know surveying parents is a great way to get information, but one responsibility of the board is to set the calendar. And so remember, you're representing people and you're making that decision as representatives in the way that you think is best for your community. So I think absolutely reaching out to your constituents is a way to get that information to bring it back here.
Thank you. Andrea?
Just, I'm trying to clarify what you were saying. I know that November is set and the first 3 days of PD are set.
Yeah.
But are you thinking about combining those half days into a full day? So you're eliminating, like, is it contractual that they have to have all the half days of PD or early dismissals, or can they be combined? So it's.
Well, the half-days are not contractual, but contractually, I can't ask the teachers to work more than 185 days. And this is a 185-day calendar.
What?
So I couldn't.
Eid day.
So Eid, I couldn't say, kids don't have school and teachers, you have to come to work. Because our students still have to come for the 180 days.
Got it.
So there's no, I mean, unless the board, and I see Mr. Serapiglia is here, unless the board would like to impact bargain for making the teachers work extra days in their contract, that is a very expensive proposition.
So it's 100, so contractually, they have 185, correct?
185, our calendar has 181 for students. Legally, they have to go 180. And we've always had that one, we call it a forgive me day. So if for some reason snow days push you to, say, the Monday, you are able to forgive that as a student day so that you don't have to end on a weird Monday.
Okay.
I have been trying to say my piece for a long time. I have to say that like this does not make me feel good. The proposal for putting Eid first, because as I said, like, you know, and I remember the proposal last year was that it was Eid and Diwali was the request I think the student put. And I was the one who mentioned that that seems inadequate given that the Chinese community is large enough in this community that we should also honor the Lunar New Year. So I remember this very vividly. But the reason I think it is important is that, like, now I don't know Orange and Bethany as well, but I have seen the community, the size of the Indian community in Woodbridge. It is now a reasonably large-sized community. And I've seen many events around things, etc. And so I think it is, and community would feel quite bad if their request was not considered. So I want to make sure that we do bring this up in a way that I think that several members of the committee would feel quite bad. So I think it's important. But more importantly, I think putting these things in a split way, I think is not ideal. I think if we are dealing with the three, I think we should deal with the three, and like, you know, we should come up with a way that, I don't know what, clearly there are constraints, otherwise you would do it, right? Like, you know, I respect that. But I do think we have to figure out a way to do this to the extent that is possible. And I would say another thing, like, you know, to Carol's point about respect, I think, you know, when there is a large community, group of people, we worry about everything. I remember last year, we spent inordinate amounts of time thinking about what the airline ticket costs would be if we split the thing between the weekend versus etc. Because it affected us, so many of us, that we were willing to spend a considerable amount of time. And I was kind of surprised that, like, the level of thought we would do into, like, you know, how people would get flight tickets as opposed to something like this, was quite different in the amount of weight that we put in. And as a representative, I want to make sure that the voice of the folks who feel like this is something important is respected.
Okay.
Right, and I'm sorry, Paul, just one more thing. So, I'm sorry, it's about the lunar. So lunar does fall in February, but I also want to give it the same weight because it's not just the Chinese, it's East Asian communities, and that if we give fair consideration, I do support giving fair consideration, and I support giving these days off because of our community and for all the reasons that were mentioned, but
All right.
also in the future, because lunar moves.
Okay, but here's my point. This was an introduction of the calendar. We had a discussion. Please submit your concerns, questions to the superintendent, because we are going to take this up at our meeting in December and vote on it. So all of these things will be discussed again with the actual outcome being decided. With that, we have an agenda that we need to complete. I'm going to ask the board that we move on at this time. Discussion and possible action on setting the 2025 graduation date, which we've done pretty much at these meetings in previous few years, with the new statute that allows us to do that and establish a permanent date at this time. Dr. Byers?
So I have to credit Sophia for reminding me that I needed to do this because apparently her parents were asking when graduation was. So at this point, the last day of school is scheduled for Tuesday, June 10th. And the board can set a graduation date of Tuesday, June 10th, or anything after that if you so wish. It's usually our preference that we actually set it on the last day of school and not end the school and then make the kids come back for graduation. So that's what I would be asking the board to set the date for at this point in time.
One quick question, with snow days and things of that nature, if we set it as the last day of school, that's the language?
So it is, you set it as graduation date. So it means that if we have snow days, the 7th through 11th graders will still be here in school, but our seniors will have graduated on Tuesday, June 10th.
We are setting a date.
Yes, that is correct.
And this is strictly the date of graduation for the seniors, has nothing to do with the last day of school for the school district. Any other questions, concerns?
But it is the 10th,
10th.
the last date, because if
As
it.
of right now
As
in
of
your
right now.
calendar, the last day of school is the 10th. Once snow days come, it will not be, but you can still set graduation for that date.
Okay, our discussion will not continue. Do I have a, do I have a motion?
You have it from.
Sean and Mike?
Sean, Mike, thank you. With that, the motion is to have graduation on Tuesday, June 10th, 2025.
Yes.
Is there any further discussion? None?
There's no penalty in doing that, right?
No penalty, no.
In terms of credits and exams and, okay. I'm good.
Ms. Bradley?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Ms. Eichler?
Yes.
Mr. Hartshorn?
Yes.
Ms. Hubbard?
Yes.
Dr. Kronikron?
Yes.
Ms. Lavere-Daddio?
Yes.
Mr. McDonough?
Yes.
Dr. Ola Delay?
Yes.
Mr. Reed?
Yes.
Ms. Schlank? Ms. Schuster?
Yes.
Okay, the motion carries. Graduation day will be on June 10th. So when anybody asks when graduation is, we can answer that question now. Moving on to number 8, discussion and possible action on 2024-2025 Board of Education regular meeting schedule, which is on page 8. And this is what I was trying to get in a word before, that now is the time to ask the question about the board meetings. All right, before we do that, do I have a motion to approve this for meetings? Carla and Andrea. Discussion.
I know 1 or 2, 3 meetings ago, we had the proposed special meetings in there.
Yep.
Those all stay the same?
So, yes, so the special meetings that I sort of informally set would stay the same. These are the ones that once we set them, we have to have these meetings, and they allow us to operate with a regular meeting agenda. I have to submit these to the towns by December 1st. It doesn't change our ability to have the special meetings, but these would be our official regular meetings. And I think it gives us kind of a year to sort of finish with this model, to decide if it's something that we want to continue without adding the special meetings as part of our regular meeting agenda.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? If not?
Yes.
Yes.
So for the August meeting, is there a specific reason as to why we need to have an August meeting?
Yeah, because we basically have so much work we have to do to get the year started that I don't think, all of this, the financial stuff mostly, that backs up all summer long because we're doing a ton of finances. We closed the books on June 30th. We opened up a new fiscal year on July 1. We would be incredibly bogged down without having a meeting in the summer. August is preferable because it does give us time to sort of get all of that stuff worked out. We did push it, and again, this was never me. I am assuming it was moved to the 3rd Monday in August to push it as late into that that month as possible. But I honestly don't think we would be able to function as efficiently with all of the things we need to do from finance if we didn't have an August meeting. Terry, I don't know if you want to weigh in, but I know you're a huge part of that.
Yeah, then August is one of our, biggest agendas. We've closed out the year. That's why it is pushed to the 3rd week. It gives us more time to close out the year. We talk about, the capital reserve appropriation at that time. I just think if you bump it up to September, you would have a much longer agenda to get through.
What about consideration?
And we oftentimes have like transfers and things that we had to do sort of in the summer independently on our own, because you guys aren't around, that we have to get caught up on. Big purchases, like a lot of times our computer leases come through very late in June. It's after the June meeting, so we don't even get to talk about those until August. So some pretty significant, I think, operational things that happen as part of that August meeting.
Would there be a special meeting in June as well, after the June 9 meeting?
Yep, so the way, if we were to follow this year's proposal, that special meeting is my evaluation and the board's sort of self-reflection, and which we've kind of done special meetings for that all along, and that's been the topic. It just was never formally built into the schedule. This year it's a little more formally built in.
Would there be a consideration for the fourth Monday of the month if we are continuing to not start school after Labor Day?
So that is typically our first day of school.
Right.
So
I have to be here for that.
So that makes it, I think, challenging for
Well, can't you call in?
as an administrative.
Last year.
I guess, I understand that you want to be here for these meetings.
Oh, I do.
But there's 13 of us, and if we all have concerns about what meetings, I mean, like last year, one of the meetings fell on my anniversary, and hey, I wanted to be at home with my wife, but, like these things, like, I understand.
We would have let you.
You came?
Sean's trying to go.
I was not being completely honest about wanting to be home with my wife on my anniversary. But it's one day, if you can't miss it, we
That was on
understand.
video,
Well, of course, we understand you want to be home on your anniversary.
My wife doesn't watch them
I'm
either,
just
it's okay.
asking if there's a consideration, so that, since it is, to your point, an important meeting in how we appropriate funds, that, is there any consideration for
Yeah,
having
the consideration for the administrative staff, who might be dealing with first day busing issues, first day cafeteria issues, first day special education issues. I can't guarantee our presence at that meeting because of what we are often dealing with on the first day of school.
Make for a lot shorter meeting.
Can we do it in reverse, no offense,
that point,
Donna?
our
Does
current-
anybody have an issue with that Monday in August as it's presented? Besides Donna?
Well, that'll be our vote.
We might as well be talking about
That'll be our vote.
2080, I mean.
Yeah, I know, but at this
How do
point
we
in
know? I
time,
mean, that's
at this point in
At
time.
this point, no, I think I'm free. But maybe I don't have to talk about it again in July, and then I'm sure we will talk about it again.
We're writing that down.
Given Donna's point, I don't really have a problem with Monday, I may not be able to come, and that's fine. But I wanted to ask if Wednesday might be, is there a reason why Monday has to be the day of the meeting, or if the first day? I just wanted to ask that.
No, there's not a reason necessarily why Mondays are the day of our board meetings. The second week, yes, because the other elementary school districts take up the other, like, I think Orange is the third week on a Monday. I can't remember when Woodbridge is, but, so they're taking up the other Mondays of the month, so that's how we got the second Monday. Bethany, I think, is the outlier, because you guys meet on Wednesdays, right?
A lot of town meetings in Orange are on Wednesday nights too.
Yeah.
And that, yes, that's the other piece, is that we were offset from other town meetings, so we weren't overlapping, so people could attend them.
There's already been dates for the alternative meetings that we have? That's already out there?
We vote.
Yes, I shared
We
those
voted this
back in
year.
September.
For next year?
Well,
No.
for the springtime.
For this year coming?
Yes. So special meetings, we don't have to set in advance, but a regular meeting schedule I have to set and give to the town clerk by December 1st.
I'm wondering
by
if
statute.
maybe the special meetings can be on an alternative day.
Consider that. Something for consideration. Okay. If
Or we
there's-
just stay consistent in Mondays.
I'm getting a haircut. No, I'm not free.
Are we voting on the August date now? I don't even
No,
know.
we're voting on this.
We're voting on the calendar as it's presented. if you don't like it, vote against it. That's, that's the thing. Yes, sir.
I'm motioning it already. Get it
yeah.
moving.
Thank you.
I have
question.
Carla Eichler and Andrea Hubbard first and second.
Either way, it's on the
Okay.
table.
Sorry, I missed them doing it.
Right, okay. All right.
All right, ready, roll call. Ms. Bradley?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Ms. Eichler?
Yes.
Mr. Hartshorn?
Yes.
Ms. Hubbard?
Yes.
Dr. Krutakran?
Yes.
Ms. Laverde-Dadio?
Yes.
Mr. McDonough?
Yes.
Dr. Oladele?
Yes.
Mr. Reed?
Yes.
Ms. Schlank?
Yes.
Ms. Schuster?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Yes, because that no would really just push it. That would be the defining moment, correct?
Okay.
can always
We move on to number 9, correspondence. Anything special that,
We got 2 letters. One was from the students, which we've discussed
Right,
on
which
the
we-
holidays. The other was a program that's being socialized around your body, your choice. And it's a philosophy of educating your children to be aware of abuse.
that's the one we received very recently. Right, yes. Okay, thank you. We move on, Chairman's report. One thing, and it was already raised earlier, Veterans Day, and on behalf of the board, I think all of us are on the same page in this and thanking members of our community, members of the military who have served, and also honoring our students who have graduates, alumnus, who have served our country bravely. And we think that one of the things that Amity does very, very well is honor and reflect on the service that are given by former students at our school. Veterans are highly on our list of priorities when it comes to school. I don't know what was done today in school, but I do know that there were numerous programs reflecting on Veterans Day and its meaning. So that was something I did want to raise, and it was also mentioned our wall of veterans. I knew several of the students, and unfortunately several of our students who have passed and were killed in action. Make it difficult to think about them on days like today. So that's an important point from the chair, and I know the board all agrees on that. I also wanted to mention that we know that there was a lot of action in the field of politics this week, past week with elections, and at our last meeting, we had a presentation on the elections that were done in the schools. My understanding was that it was a very well-done process, and the results were publicized and published. We saw those results. Probably more of an indicator than most of us expected would be. The outcome is pretty much right on target. Going forward, we will be looking at maybe some changes on the state level. As we, legislature now will be meeting beginning in January, so it's important that, and our superintendent has mentioned that he's going to be keeping a close eye on the legislation that's put forth in Hartford for that it will impact our school district. Each year it changes. So it's something that all of us as members of the board might want to keep aware of. And lastly, as part of my report, we do have our annual meeting on at the December meeting, which will involve elections for a one-year term for all of our officers. So those of you that are currently serving, first of all, I'd like to thank you. I think you all did a great job, and it's difficult to run a board without people that are willing to work hard, and I can't imagine working with a finer group of people. You know, we take a lot of abuse at times as board members, but I can't think of anybody that's not here for the reason of service to our community, service to our school district, and the work and love of our children and the future of our children. So on a personal note, I'd like to thank you all for that. And what I'd like to do is contact each one of you that currently serve and see if you're willing to do it again, and if you want to do it again, or if there are some changes that the board feels need to be made. We'll bring that up in election at the December meeting. Okay? All right. Committee reports, ACES.
Brief report, last meeting, ACES had talked about moving all three of their special education programs to Bassett Road, so multiple age groups would be under one building, which would provide opportunity to outfit some different areas and provide more a different level of sort of education for them, so that's it for ACES.
All right. Cave?
Yeah, I've been delving into this, and it's just mind-boggling to me how many departments in the state level there are and the money that is flowing. And the only one that's really come to my bit is I'm researching the 119K project. I don't know if you've seen that yet. That's mind-boggling to me, the amount that they want to do, like 10 new departments and try to streamline everything to it. And one of their aspects is to hit all the more rural towns and get rid of the individual superintendents and make them into regions. And just, I don't know who thinks this stuff up. Maybe they're smarter than the rest of us, but I think a lot of the money that I see being appropriated for that could be spent much better at the individual school levels on teachers instead of 118 more administrative type people in Hartford.
The CAPS Cave Convention is this Friday. It did require pre-registration, but if anybody is interested, we can still see if there's an opportunity for you to attend. That's sort of the biggest news coming out of them. And the November Journal just came out, so you should have all received an email with an electronic copy of that in there. It's a good one, especially some of the legal updates and some of the budgeting articles, so.
Any additional questions? I appreciate that. Didn't hear about that myself, and
have you, I was gonna actually stop in and ask you if you had seen anything on it. It's interesting how they delve into it. They're saying over the next 10 years, there's 119,000 kids that are to be at jeopardy for not graduating, having hardship, not making, productive citizens, or to be on the dole, on welfare. How do you save all of these kids coming through? And by like page 15, there's like 11 new departments they want to do, and it's $25 million here, $18 million there, $40 million there. We need new commissions to try to figure out what we need to do in the next 10 years. And by page 30, I still hadn't figured out what they're actually trying to do to save all these children and get them somewhere, except spend, I tried to add it up, $178 million. I started to lose count, and I'm like, how does, and none of it seemed to go to actual teachers, students, schools. It was all administrative. We need to do surveys, we need to do commission findings, we need to do this, and I'm like, and who are all these people that are we hiring? Like, is it superintendents, assistants, like, who are they pulling that supposedly have the education to do this work?
That's a detailed case.
yeah. Okay.
No, that's my happy report.
It's a good one.
Communications, we have.
Communications, we have our fall forum next Monday from 6:30 to 8, focused on technology. You can submit questions up until Wednesday.
Tomorrow. It closes at the end of the day tomorrow,
Oh, okay.
the 12th.
Tomorrow. And any questions that were submitted prior to the postponement will still be addressed, so.
Do you have enough questions this time? Do you have enough correspondence?
I haven't looked at it a little bit. Hopefully. We had a couple come in after.
A few more.
postpone.
Certainly not the same volume that we've had for other forums. but enough to get the conversation started.
Okay, thank you. District Health and Safety?
There was a meeting on October 8th, and I'm just going to go over some of the highlights. So the nurses report, nothing really about respiratory out of the norm. Some car accidents, though, on and off campus, and some accidents that we usually see in the gym classes. You see facilities, you see finance. The only thing is about food service. Since breakfast is no longer free, there's been a decline in the number of purchases. A la cartes have gone up, and one thing that was mentioned is that they would like students to keep their IDs for the end of the year, because they use them the following year. And there's some classes that are very popular, Team Life, and the gym or the PE and health departments have been working hard to boost morale. And they have Phys Ed Frenzy Fridays, I hope I said that right, which has been really popular too with the school and the staff. And it's in the morning before class starts, and music, food, and there are other departments that are interested. I also have the minutes for this, so instead of reading to you, if anyone wants them, I'm happy to send them on.
Appreciate that, thank you. Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Executive Committee.
I wasn't able to make the November 20, sorry, not even, October.
October.
Look up on that calendar. The October 22nd meeting. So I'm afraid I'm unable to, but what came out of it obviously was the climate survey presentation and discussion about it.
And then we have another one scheduled for November
22nd, yes, which I think might be next week, I'm not sure.
District Technology on page 9. Any questions on that? Any comments? All right. Facilities on page 10, a monthly report.
We have not met, but there is a report. There's one issue that we'll be working on. Hopefully next month we'll have more information about the thermostats at Amity. They're having some issues.
All right, okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
Has the district have you had to change anything in light of the, level 2 drought, or have you had to change anything related to, your facilities, operations, or anything? No?
No. I mean, if it, we'd still take care of and water the fields, so they're probably much greener than your yard at this point. And I mean, and essentially, when you consider that, I mean, we don't do burns, we're in theory a smoke-free zone, so nobody should be throwing out cigarette butts that are accidentally starting these fires, so at this point, we really haven't changed anything. I do think that that the humidity problems that everybody complains about in the summer certainly have probably gone away, and air is a little drier than normal, but it's not impacting us.
Okay, question, all right. We move on to finance, presentation, discussion of third quarter 2024 executive summary, review, Amity pension fund, sick, severance account, and OPEB trust. Page 11.
We had Mr. Kochmar, our representative from Fiducian here at the AFC meeting, and basically reported that all of the funds are performing near the benchmark for the quarter and for the year around 20%. So they're all doing very well, they're on target, and they're well-funded in comparison to state levels. And actually OPEB is better than state averages, so.
That's because we don't charge as much as the state does for everything that they do. Okay, we move on to the October 1 enrollment report at page 35.
So I left at your seats at the beginning of the meeting a revised memo, and it just corrected the towns in the direction that their allocations were going. If you look at the chart, you could see that Woodbridge has a significant increase in the number of students this year, 44, while Orange went down 9 and Bethany went up 2. So how that impacts revenue if, with a 0% increase in the budget, the enrollment shift alone would mean that Bethany would see about $104,000 less in their allocation, Orange about $703,000 less, and Woodbridge about $807,000 more in their allocation. We expected the enrollment to increase by 27 students, and it actually increased by 37. And following that is the actual chart of the enrollment, and Woodbridge does look on track to have another increase next year. It's just the way their enrollment is in their elementaries right now.
Any questions on that? I just have one question. We have representation of towns on our Board of Ed. Does the enrollment changes impact which towns the representatives come from?
So, no, and Terry's better at explaining this, but it's actually based off of the census data. And so every 10 years, when we get the census data, it ties that into how the board composition is structured.
So it's not school enrollment or district enrollment, it's town populations? Okay.
That's a great question.
Yeah, thank you.
So that probably shouldn't change anytime soon.
No, right.
Yeah, I'm guessing that given the.
I think it was 2020 we had it?
Yeah, 2020 was.
Census.
Yeah. So, but when you consider how many people it's taking into account, it probably
Entire
stays.
population pays the taxes, so we're going to take into account the population.
What can I tell you about that? A discussion of monthly financial statements, page 37.
So not a lot of changes this month, a net change of about $64,000 less available in the budget. A lot of that has to do with special education. We had a slight change in certified salaries and in unemployment compensation, but a lot of variance in special education, transportation, and tuition, and Mr. Brandt will give you an update afterwards. I will note that as far as health insurance claims go, we're at 100.7% of claims, so they're running on the high side right now. Kind of hoping that that's what they did last year at the beginning of the year. They were much higher and did come down. I did meet with Brown & Brown to do some budget planning, and they did indicate that our high claimants are currently low for the size group we have, so that was favorable news, and hopefully will help the budget preparation.
Okay, any questions? All right.
I just wanted to make the point that, we are again this year in an area where of really low surplus, or or not deficit funds, with 100.7, and then the revenues from the special ed from the state have gone down. So this is clearly unfavorable news, and but by the standards of the surplus, this is good news that we have been budgeting well. So I just wanted to make that point again, that that this is a bad news scenario rather than a good news scenario.
Okay, we move on to D, Director of Finance Administration approved transfers under 3,000. It's on page 65. Are there any comments or questions? Nothing? Okay. E, discussion and possible action on budget transfers over 3,000, page 66. There are a few for us to consider. Ms. Loomis?
So actually, I'm gonna ask if Mr. Brandt can sort of give a special ed update, since the 2 of the 3 transfers are related to special education, and then that way it'll help make sense for the requests that are in there.
Sure thing. So abbreviated update of what was provided to AFC. So you'll see 2 transfers in front of you. One of those transfers is to cover for a contracted agency providing para-educator support. We currently have 3 openings for para-educators in the district. We've had these openings for various amounts of times, but greater than a month for all of them. We've had a very limited applicant pool. These openings have been for various different reasons. Para-educators leaving the district. As I noted with AFC, none of these para-educators who have left for another para-educator role. They've either left to become a dispatcher, to go work at a private charter school that doesn't require certification, or left altogether and gone into different family situations. So this isn't from a case where they're leaving us to go to our elementary districts who may pay better, or different para-educator compensation. This is truly just, these are very hard positions to fill at this time. within special education. So we work very closely with the staffing agency, who has very competitive rates, who are able to secure at least one of those paraeducator openings, as we do consistently have some turnover within our paraeducator openings. Additionally, you'll see a second transfer related to coverage of additional occupational and physical therapy costs. Those costs are really stemming from an influx of students who came into the district, whether from our elementary schools or from transfers in. As I shared with AFC, this transfer would cover if the billing rate stayed exactly the same for the entire school year. I do not anticipate that to have happened, but in complete transparency, I'd rather come first from the board, make a transfer to cover the funds as we anticipate them right now, and then if need be, move those funds if they are needed somewhere else. Additionally, you heard Ms. Loomis in her quick financial update talk about some variances within special education transportation. What I shared with the Finance Committee is that those variants are really coming not only from the bus route, but when we require additional adults on the bus. So aides. There's been a significant cost in how much the aides are charged back to the district due to various changes that we're going to see in employment law coming in soon, the increase in minimum wage, which I believe is coming soon, the creation of additional paid sick leave for employees who may not have otherwise qualified. So the aid cost that gets shared to us, while an indirect cost and goes under transportation, is really a human salary-based cost that is now more substantial than in previous years. When available, we certainly do cover those aides with Amity employees, Amity paraeducators, but given that we are currently short paraeducators, we're not always able to do that and cover those with aides. Additionally, Ms. Loomis referenced in her budget update some differences in special education tuition. What those are coming through is there's been a change lately where tuition dollar amounts used to previously cover all tuition services. Now all of our agencies, including ACES, are going to an a la carte model, meaning that they are now billing us a flat tuition rate and then adding additional fees for additional services that special education students require. We could get into that in a much larger meeting, could be a topic for a special, session board meeting in the spring about how all that happens, but that is now why you're seeing variance in our tuition dollars. That is very new. Additionally, we've seen a substantial increase in the pass-through costs on how much outside agency charges us for paraprofessionals for our outplaced special education students. That number is now pushing $50 an hour, where before that was a much lower rate, again, passing on those costs that they're occurring now to the local school district. So thus all the variances you see. That is a very abbreviated version of what I shared with AFC. Happy to answer any questions, but kind of hits at the hallmarks with the variances you're seeing in my budget right now, along with the budget requests that we do have in.
We thank you for that abbreviated discussion, and we also we had a damaged frequency drives that were damaged during a microgrid test, and I was kind of in the end of that meeting hearing a little bit about that, but can anyone, you want to tell us what that's all about?
Steve, you tell them what that's about.
You only have to make it shorter than his.
He's only got one transfer, he's got two.
So basically what a frequency drive is, it's for lack of a better word, it's a computer that drives the motors for the air handling system. It's the computer that drives the supply or the return fed motor. It ramps the motor up in RPM, up or down, depending on the demand of what the air handler is looking for. So when they were doing the microgrid test, at some point transitioning back to grid power, it looked like we got a surge and it took out two of the drives, one of the air handlers.
Okay. This is an expense that the school district is bearing with the hope sometime in the future that we can appeal to the state to somehow work out a deal where they could possibly sometime, maybe 5 or 6 or 7 years down the road, possibly reimburse us for that. But that was done with state money that still has our microgrid not working, so we're kind of stuck there. So to our AFC chair, all of these 3 motions were recommended approval from the AFC.
And as one.
Okay, and we did it as one.
As one, yes.
One vote. These are on page 66, replacing from contingency of facilities to repair and maintenance, $9,485. The two special ed ones, from classified salaries to professional technical services, in both cases, one for $25,725 and the other one for $53,253. So do I have somebody make a motion for those transfers? Christina made the motion, second, Patrick. All right, do we have any further questions or discussions? Donna?
Steve, is there gonna be another test for the microgrid?
Not in the foreseeable future.
So surge protector or something, not something needed?
The new drives are a little more robust, and even, what we do to try to limit this is we shut down all the air handlers when they do the test. And unfortunately, for whatever reason, even though the air handlers were shut down, the unit's still powering up, and it's repair.
Right.
So, we try to mitigate any problems like that, that still unfortunately happens.
And Tom, I'm sorry.
It's not just Amity whose equipment is also getting ruined, the town's equipment is, and basically at our last meeting, we just said we're not gonna test it anymore. It's until they figure out how to stop ruining everything for us, so.
6 or 7 years.
It's all on.
Maybe 6 or 7 years, we'll get reimbursed.
Yeah.
So Tom, did I understand correctly that there's 3 positions open and this is for 1, or did I mishear that?
No, we have 3 paraeducator positions open. This is for the one most crucial while we reassign some other paraeducators.
So do you still have 2 positions that need to be filled at this point?
We do.
So could we, do you have any idea of how we can?
We're looking at different options right now. We posted a floating paraprofessional in hopes of getting someone without a direct building assignment. It's a model I used in a previous school district, where you kind of assign them on a week-by-week basis. It depends on the applicant pool. Right now, all students are receiving their services. It's just causing us to shift people between programs more often, and in one case, shift an individual between buildings. So while we're functioning and covering the IDEA required services, we're not doing it in the most effective ways possible right now.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Call the roll?
Ms. Bradley?
Abstain.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Ms. Eichler?
Yes.
Mr. Hartshorn?
Yes.
Ms. Hubbard?
Yes.
Dr. Krunakaran?
Yes.
Ms. Liveradio?
Yes.
Mr. McDonough?
Yes.
Dr. Gulladillet?
Yes.
Mr. Reed?
Yes.
Ms. Schlenk?
Yes.
Ms. Schuster?
Yes.
Motion carries, thank you. We move on to policy. Here are 5 first reads, I think, here.
Yeah, we had a great policy meeting.
You did. You got a lot done.
Okay. To all our board members, first read is our first opportunity to hear about these. Probably a good idea for you to look at them in depth, and if there's any questions that come up at this meeting, to examine those concerns, and if you have any other additional questions, get them to our chair or the superintendent, and we can go from there, because we're not actually voting on any of these today. All right, so.
Yeah, I think that's a good point to make. So the first policy went through some heavy revisions. And did I jump ahead? Yes, I did, sorry. The first policy is a combination of CABE language and as Dr. Byers let us know, that was cleaned up heavily by the Amity lawyer, and so she's comfortable with the language included in it and would prefer that we didn't deviate from it too much, as it has been approved by the lawyer. And we didn't really have any kind of contentious conversations around this policy at the meeting.
No, it was driven by Title IX. We updated it The first go-through, the policy committee didn't love the language. It was very Title IX heavy and kind of ignored all the other titles. So I just asked our board's attorney to just draft us our own. So she did model it off of CABE, probably also Shipman and Goodwin, pulled the best together, but it's a much better policy. She also developed the regulation already, so as soon as this is approved, it all goes up and is set and ready to go.
And that includes the paragraph about the use of the property to Boy Scouts
Yes.
of America, which seemed a little randomly placed in there, but.
Is actually part of statute.
Yes.
So is Title 36 something about patriotic societies? Like I found that language a little confusing as to what is it as a patriotic society, what exactly?
So I don't know if it's patriotic per se, but it's definitely it's just I know that the Boy Scouts have, and which is now Scouting America, and the Girl Scouts have sort of this exclusive right of access to schools. It's
Yeah, that
very
seems-
it's a very antiquated law, but has stayed on the books, so there it is.
It just seems odd to call those two out and just say.
Yeah, the only patriotic ones.
And it has always been like that. I mean, Paul probably remembers this, but yeah, that's just the way that the law is written right now.
Yep, so we can move on to the
5131,
next
right?
policy. This policy went through heavy revisions and now includes some statutory changes, which you will see noted, just the policy with the red.
Starting on
Yes.
page 78.
78. This was a new statute, is this D? Am I?
J, I believe.
Yeah, D is where we start changing.
is
So,
Oh, I see.
And this included separated in and out of school suspensions, and this language covered that.
yes.
Yes.
So the legislation just updated at the last legislative session to make some distinctions between in-school suspension and out-of-school suspension that didn't previously exist. So the policy now addresses those distinctions that are part of statute,
I'm sorry, what were the two? In-house and?
in-school and out-of-school suspensions.
You know, just a history, we've looked at this many times over the last couple of years, and we had it pretty much updated to our, the way we liked it, and then, of course, the statute changed, so we have to make those changes. So anything you see in there is probably statutory, and that's what's been added. Okay?
All right, if there's nothing more to cover with that, we can move on to the next policy. Sorry, I'm just going through my notes here.
Page 93, I think.
Oh, yeah, I'm actually going from my packet from the
Okay.
last meeting, because that's where I had all my
Right.
notes.
Yeah.
But, sorry.
Go from your packet.
I am, but now, yeah, the packet's, I know. I got some new glasses. All right. Where were we? Which one?
So this should be the teacher evaluation.
Teacher evaluation.
Yes, okay. So this actually was a total rewrite of the policy. This came from CABE, and this removed the timeline criteria for the evaluation. So yes, this is the changes
Yeah.
to the
So
evaluation.
again, there were statutory changes to the teacher evaluation process. The biggest thing is it removed this concept of rating teachers, and changed some language around how we have to use the evaluation rubrics. And so the whole process changed, so we just scrapped the old policy, which was very tied to the old process, and put in a new policy. Mr. Picaro and I actually worked on this one together since he's so connected to the teacher evaluation program. Both of us are very happy with what we have here, and yeah.
We had a presentation done on the teacher evaluation plan, so this reflects what was presented in that presentation, and also we had some questions that I think were answered to the satisfaction of most of the board members about reviewing teacher evaluations and what would be the problems that might come up should there be considerations for additional support of the teachers. And that's all written into there.
And moving on to bylaws of the board. There was in red, we discussed the special meeting.
Right, yeah.
Some of the parameters of that, and that really was.
I think the first one is the officers, 9120. And so that one, very briefly, is our attempt at revising it so that the annual meeting is not annual, but is now biennial. So that way, in the odd years, when we have new board members elected, that's when we would elect new chairs and officers. But in even years like this one, when nobody has changed and everybody's already in their position, we would maintain the same officers and chairs. I can say operationally, and this is where I called Mr. McDonough out the last time, it helps because when I'm constantly having to shift to our treasurer and we're changing, bank accounts statements and things like that, if doing it every year just kind of gums up the works. I think it's also really good. There's a lot of PD around being a board chair, and if you had to change who your board chair was every year, not only would you lose all that PD, but the new person coming on board would now have to do a whole bunch more PD to become board chair. So I think it just makes good sense now that we're all on the same election cycle between our three towns.
Would this take effect?
No, because we will actually start the December meeting before we voted on this policy. So we'll still have to do the annual meeting this year. And then again next year, because it'll be an odd year.
In any case, I don't think it would be able to be take effect, because technically we're all voted for a one-year term. And you can't say suddenly the one-year term is turning into a two-year term. Either way.
Yeah.
But that explains the whole thing, and a lot of school districts do this also. All right, and.
Want to vying for a spot?
No, but it's one less thing to do, and, if we got it done, it's one less.
For continuity's sake, it does make sense, yeah.
Okay, and bylaw 93.5, meeting conduct, I think this addresses a special meeting.
Yep. So please take a deep dive into these if you'd like to, and email comments or questions before.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Policy Committee.
Sure. Good hard work.
Detailed committee stuff tonight.
I think we can't touch Kate.
Okay,
That was
top tier.
personnel report, anything special?
So no, you have an enclosure. You can see that there's very little movement and action. I would like to thank Carla today. Before coming to the board meeting, she spent 6 hours interviewing for our assistant superintendent position. So we are making progress, and I do still anticipate presenting somebody to the board on November 25th, which will then kind of move everything else forward in a timely fashion.
Just one candidate?
Yes, you'll receive just one candidate. The other thing that Mr. Brandt didn't mention but did come up during finance is we have posted for a full-time special education teacher for the remainder of this school year to serve as essentially a floating substitute special education teacher. We are finding we have so many absences in our special education department. We are unable to cover those absences. Every time a special ed teacher is out, we really are supposed to have a certified special ed teacher in place. So some of our teachers are picking up extra sections, which is great, but that's also leads to teacher burnout because they're exhausted. If we don't have a special education teacher, parents are entitled to compensatory services, which are very expensive. So we put our heads together and just couldn't figure out any other solution, knowing several long-term absences that we anticipate coming up and just kind of the struggles we've been facing this year. So it is posted as a full-time position, hoping that it would be enticing with benefits and the protections of the teacher's contract, that somebody would like to join with us, but we'll see. But it would only be for this school year until we have a better sense of long-term absences for next year.
All right, new business and announcements, is there anybody that has comments about business announcements, and we have our items for the next regular meeting due by November 29th, and we have a meeting coming up on,
So we have we have a
Well, we
community
have the
forum next
forum.
week on the 18th, and then the following week on the 25th is our budget presentation from the principals and department chairs. So that one's, we'll invite all of our AFC members. I'll actually invite members of the boards of finance from the towns. We'll flip the script, and my team will be up front while you guys can be in the audience, and we'll just kind of sort of show where we are at the start of the budget process requests, and really open up the first opportunity to ask questions and see where the budget's going.
okay.
With the Woodbridge numbers going up, it should be like a huge percentage increase, I imagine, for Woodbridge.
Yes.
With that, we'll call for adjournment at 8:36 without anybody disagreeing. Adjourned at 8:36.